big reasons why we went with what we've done. So we've been debating whether to go with a separate diesel tank for the heating, or to dip into the already existing diesel tank that we have, obviously the one we use for driving. Now the issue is red diesel versus whatever diesel that you buy to actually run vehicles. The only difference between red diesel and the standard diesel that you pump into your vehicle to make it run is that, well, red diesel is called red, and I think they're exactly the same, except that the red diesel is not taxed, because normal diesel has road tax on it. As such, red diesel is at least half the cost. So to run the heating in the vehicle on red diesel would be a lot cheaper than actually dipping into our...
Essentially follows where the tape is. So that should be relatively easy. It doesn't look scary at all. Well, you know, that is if you ignore all the wiring that has to go with this, all the wiring looms, which we did translate from German, and they were about as helpful as you can imagine Google Translate to be, but we at least can tell what they connect to. So this here is the furnace. This is the brains of the operation. Everything connects to this central point, it seems. So to feed the furnace, we need the fuel and the air. So the air comes in through this black thing. This is the air intake. And I think this is some sort of filter, like an air filter that you have in your car on the end. And it connects a lot more securely than that with a Jubilee clip onto there, onto that one. The silver thing coming off and heading down all the way down there, that is the exhaust. So we want to point that the opposite direction of the air intake because we don't want them mixing. So that goes all the way down. There's a silencer like you have in the vehicle, and that will poke out. We'll probably poke it out the same way the exhaust in the vehicle is going. So that goes out there. And then this blue line that goes into the furnace here is the fuel line. So the fuel line gets through its own fuel pump, so we're not connecting it to the fuel pump already in the van. We've got our own fuel pump, our own fuel filter, and then that filter leads into our fuel tank, which will not be made of cardboard. So with the fuel tank, like we said, we're not sure whether we're going with our own one or whether we're going to tap into the van's one. But either way, we've got an auxiliary line on our fuel tank already in the van if we do want to tap into that, or we'll just install our own. So that's everything to make the furnace run. And then essentially we've got the inside cabin area. So our glycol, so the stuff that will be going around the entire system here, will be stored in the tank. And then when we turn the furnace on, this pump will pump the glycol out of this tank into the furnace, into this top one here. That's the cold line. It gets heated up in here, and then it will come out and into, first of all, it will go into this heat exchanger. So we've got an inlet and an outlet there for the glycol, and then this inlet and outlet is for the water. So basically they don't touch inside the heat exchanger, but they come close enough so they transfer the heat to each other, hence heat exchanger. So heat up in the floor so we don't have cold toes, and since we're having a futon and sleeping on the floor, we want a warm floor, hence the underfloor heating. So that will zigzag back, and it will eventually make its way back into the header tank, and the cycle repeats. And that's 3 methods of heating that we're using.
Oh, and then we also have the controller. This controller is the controller that turns on the furnace. So the furnace there is going to be wired to this controller, and then basically this button here has multiple functions, which we'll go over them some other video. And I believe you can also see the temperature on this screen, and you can set up some sort of timer for like 7-day timer on this. So that's controller number 1, and that turns on the heat over there. Yeah. And then controller number 2 is to control this. Yeah, so this is the air matrix, and this air matrix is like a third party.